no safety nets, no landing pads, and no respect for the law. Lace up your shoes and grab some spray paint. We're taking a quick peek at Hover. Hover, or Hover Revolt of Gamers, is a parkour platform game developed by Midgar Studio. I'm unsure of exactly what the official name of the game is, as it appears as just Hover on Steam, but Hover Revolt of Gamers in other places. The Revolt of Gamers part not only helps give some insight on the game's overall plot setup, but also distinguishes it from the 1995 bumper car and capture the flag mashup Hover, that has to be yelled because it was spelled with an exclamation point, and included on discs for Microsoft Windows 95. While Revolt of Gamers is all about running and jumping, there is some context to be thrown in here and there. In a city in the far future, the government has taken control of its citizens and banned leisure activities such as video games, which means playing this game in the world this game is in would be highly illegal. While in this day and age it's kind of ridiculous to think of such a thing happening in real life, I'm sure you've heard of the multiple implications people have given video games for corrupting the youth, and how the medium has been used as a scapegoat for people's actions throughout the years. It was a big thing only a few years ago with anti-video game activists like Jack Thompson, but these days most see games as relatively harmless. Regardless, in the wake of the ban in the world of Hover, a group of rebels calling themselves the Gamers have come together in order to take down the man and play their games in peace. How do they do this? Do they storm the gates with guns loaded and fire the cannons? No, of course not. They aren't crazy. They just spray paint graffiti everywhere and cause random mischief. I mean, the idea of the government banning video games is one thing, but it's another to go to war over it. That's a bit much. Being a game about parkour means that pretty much everything you're doing is related to jumping and running, or running and jumping, or some combination of the two. One of the interesting things about how the game handles this is its multitude of camera options. The game can be played in first person, third person, and some odd combinations of both. Personally, I found third person to be the easiest to use since it let me actually see where my character was in the game world, an issue that platforming in first person has always had difficulties with. While there's some fun and fancy things players can do with the game's movement mechanics, be it grinding on rails or performing tricks while in the air, it can sometimes make navigating the game world feel more difficult than it really needs to be. Hover doesn't go level by level, but instead lets players wander around different parts of a large city. There are only a few main total locations you can explore, including 2 outdoor city sectors, a prison area, and a sewer level, because every game's gotta have one. While mechanics never change throughout the game, different areas challenge you to put them together in all kinds of different ways, depending on how they're built. City areas are all about combining forward and upward momentum, while the sewer is more for just straight up running and speed, and the prison likes to use the stealth mechanics. Which kind of sucks, because stealth is really limited in Hover. The shift key is not only what you use to grind on rails while running around, but also to go into a crouched stealth mode if you use it while standing still. While in stealth mode, movement is slow and extremely limited. It really only exists for one purpose, and that's walking across trapped floors that'll set off an alarm if you move at normal speed or higher on them. Throughout the city's walkways, and extremely prevalent within the prison, are also cameras shown by large red lights. If they spot you, they can do anything from closing doors to sending out drones to try to get you. Getting caught by one of these things not only teleports you to a different location, but also raises your wanted level, and if the level's too high, will put you straight to jail. Unlike real life, being in jail is more of an inconvenience than anything else since it's pretty easy to escape, but will kick you out of any mission you happen to be on when you get caught. Due to Hover's mostly open levels, it uses missions to get across its gameplay, which take place throughout different parts of the city. While it's neat that they revolve around going through the same basic areas in a multitude of ways, making players have to think differently about how to get from point A to point B, there's a real lack of variety to them. There's really only 3 variations to missions: racing, a thing called game ball, and performing tricks, and that's it. Racing is pretty self-explanatory. You just gotta get around the track in a certain period of time or beat everybody else in the race, while game ball is a bit more complex, but only just. From what I understand, the game ball itself is some sort of video game console that's not only used to play video games, but also for playing sports by throwing it back and forth on all over the place. Missions that use it generally revolve around picking it up from one location and taking it to another location without dropping it or someone else taking it from you. Outside of those two, the only other mission type revolves around performing tricks, which is usually a high-score challenge. As you go through the game, different missions will mix different elements of each of these together to try to make something a little bit more unique, such as having you take the game ball through different race rings within a period of time, but they really just don't do a whole heck of a lot. Throughout the whole game, you're always doing one of these 3 things in some form or another, and even though the courses and areas for them do change, it gets a bit tiring. To try and help alleviate this, Hover is a pseudo-MMO that can be played either online or offline. Playing offline leaves you alone with NPCs to go around the city, but online means that other players can join in on missions that you're doing before they start, although I was unable to get this to happen. For the most part, everyone's off doing their own thing, and while it's cool to see different players running around the city, there's very little interaction that can be done between them outside of a basic chat box. Missions aren't the only thing to do in Hover, since there are a few, let's call them collectibles, to go after as well. Spraying graffiti over anti-gamer propaganda, destroying government signs, chasing down spy drones, or hacking open chests give you something to do in between other things, and while they may come off as unrequired to play through the game, it really all depends on what all you want to do. You see, when you first create a profile to play Hover, you aren't just making the character you play as, but instead are creating your very own team. Teams consist of multiple different characters that can be swapped to at any time, with each one having their own individual levels, although all of them seem to still just be you, instead of being actual other characters. Completing missions or grabbing collectibles will earn points for your team's rank. The better you do in a mission, the better the medal you'll get at the end of it, and the more points you'll get for your team, as well as a couple other rewards. Individual character levels are important for unlocking new slots to upgrade your characters for. Everyone individually on your team can have tokens attached to them, which will make them faster, jump higher, or better at hacking. The higher that character's level is, the more of the upgrade screen that is open, and the more tokens and things you can put on your character. Some of the slots for tokens will actually work with each other, or only boost specific tokens, which puts a bit of an emphasis on how to build a character. The important thing to keep in mind is that while tokens can be removed and replaced, anything taken out of the upgrade screen is lost forever, so if there's something in there that you really like, you probably should keep it there, or if you get a really powerful token, be sure you put it where you want it, because you can't move it later on. Tokens are broken up into different tiers, and while you can't buy individual ones outright and instead have to earn them from completing missions or finding them in chests, there is a vendor where you can trade a couple of them for the chance of getting something better. Neither tokens nor individual character level impact your team's overall rank, so you might still have to go out and grind up a bit depending upon where you are in the game's overall story. Different parts of the game are gated off until you unlock them by playing through Hover's main missions. In order to progress at different points, the game will require you to be at a specific rank or higher, which means you gotta grind out some missions even if they're ones you really don't want to do. Completing all of the missions for a side character will give you their DNA kit, meaning that you can clone them and add one of them to your team to play as. Each type of clone is better at different things by default, and they have their own unique pattern for applying upgrade tokens. The annoying thing is, every time you clone a new character, you gotta play through the tutorial again with that character. There is a shortcut to get out of the tutorial quickly, but it's only open for a few seconds after the thing starts, and it's not very obvious where it is. Having to go through learning to wall jump, climb ladders, or reverse time every single time I made a new character just gets really tedious, and makes me not want to do it, even though NPCs can react to you differently depending upon who you're playing as. You may have noticed I mentioned reversing time in that last paragraph and thought, what? That sounds awesome! So let's talk about it a bit. Hover's level design is one with a large focus on height, and while I like that, it can be a little bit obnoxious. It's really neat just how the game plays with this, since different layers of the city are built in different ways depending upon where they are. Low levels are very much designed to resemble slums, while middle areas seem to be more oriented towards shops, while the highest parts of the city are the nicest areas to live in. The biggest problem is just trying to get up to these higher areas. Moving vertically in Hover can be a trial and frustration. The city is built to force players to make use of their parkour abilities, and, as such, there isn't much in the way of direct paths from one place to another. While I like that this means that you can get from pretty much anywhere to anywhere else as long as you can figure out how to do it, figuring out how to do it isn't always easy. Being at the bottom of the city, only to use your mission finder thing to see that there's one almost all the way up at the top, really makes me just not want to do that mission, since there's no easy way to get up there. Missions also don't take this into account when you're playing them, so if you end up falling off the side of a building during a race, it's up to you to find a way to get back up there before you lose. Rewinding time is the most that can be done in a situation like this, but it's limited. You can only rewind so far, and if not caught in time, it's possible you'll be unable to rewind back to somewhere on solid ground where you wanna be. Thankfully, the pause screen does have a retry button for missions, which is better than nothing, but still not all that great. Overall, Hover is somewhat of a unique game that really goes all out with parkour. I've only seen a handful of games try to use these mechanics as their sole focus, but none of them have done it in the way that Hover does. Being able to run around a large area while playing with all the different mechanics the game gives you can be a lot of fun. I just wish missions were a bit more varied and there was an easier way to get around vertically. I mean, there is a teleporter system, but they only take you to the last location you marked, and you can only mark specific locations by putting your character there within the physical space of the game. So if you haven't been there yet and set that as your destination, you can't teleport there. It seems like it would be so easy for there to be a teleporter or an elevator or even a flippin' bus that just went up and down the entire length of the city, but there isn't anything really like that. Really, it's the only big blemish I can find on a solid and well-made game, but it's something that can make just getting around feel like more of a chore than anything else. Still, it's hard not to recommend the game, especially if you're someone who's interested in parkour mechanics or just fancy platforming in games. There really isn't all that much out there like it. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think about the game or this video in the comments section. I've been Megapieman, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more quick peeks? Click on the video on the left for Seasons Beatings, a fast and frantic Christmas-themed first-person shooter. Or click on the video on the right for Rising Storm 2 Vietnam, a shooter focused on realistic mechanics and set during the Vietnam War.